how Malcolm X's upbringing, the nurturing that he received at home was the foundation as to how he developed a mindset and he was able to leave a legacy that we remember, we revere, people study and talk about to this day. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Reading Talk. And I am your most gracious host, Miss Sasha. And with Real Reading Talk, I discuss the real systemic issues that are at the very core, the very foundation, as to why we have these high levels of illiteracy that have been plaguing our Black communities and the ways in which we can combat these issues together. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me. And for those of you who have been rocking with me since day one, I appreciate you tremendously. And for my newbies, I hope that you will stay. And for everybody, please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, comment, hit the notification bell. So I want to dive in, right? So yesterday, May 19th, 2025, we celebrated the 100th birthday of our beloved ancestor, Malcolm X, aka El Haj Malik El Shabazz, aka the Black Shining Prince, as Ossie Davis, who eulogized his funeral, reminded us of during his talk, his eulogy, in remembering our beloved ancestor, the Black Shining Prince, right? And again, of course, when I talk about Malcolm X, and I've referenced him plenty of times on my episodes, and the things that come to my mind are courage, strength, resilience, persistence, extremely brilliant, a voracious reader, his absolute love for Black people and wanting to see us attain that true liberation, meaning that we do not see ourselves through the eyes of the false notion of white supremacy. We do not see ourselves as a footnote in white folks' history, that we see ourselves as a self-determined people. These are the characteristics, these are the traits, these are the things, the adjectives that come to my mind in describing this man who left a phenomenal legacy for the world to revere. I don't care where you go across this globe. Folks know about Malcolm X. May God's peace and blessings be upon him, and may he be granted the highest level of paradise. So, all of those things that I described about in describing Malcolm X, that was rooted in his foundation that was given to him from both of his parents, Louise Little and Earl Little. And why do I start there? Because when you talk about a person who exemplifies all of those different characteristics that I stated, someone who has strength, someone who is courageous, someone who has accountability, someone who admits when they have made mistakes, someone who is very well read, all of the different things that I said about him, that came from his upbringing, from his household. This is important to note. And what prompted me to talk about this, of course, again, honoring him and his legacy because of his birthday. That was on May 19th. But also, when I was listening to Dr. Amos Wilson, another Black man, unapologetically for our people, understanding that our people needed true liberation. And that meant, once again, not defining ourselves through the white social structure's eyes, all right? Meaning that we have a history, we have a legacy, we have a continent that we connect to. Dr. Amos Wilson, in one of his lectures I was listening to, and when he talked about the development of the Black child psychology, he had mentioned something in there about how when you have a Black child who thrives, who does extremely well when it comes to education and in life, period, right? And his focus again was he was talking about the education of the Black child and everything like that. One of the things that he talked about was the main ingredients that gets that Black child to where they need to be and to soar. He talked about them having that love and that care, that nurturing, that belief. So all of that stemmed from the family. So the mother, the father, the bonus parents, the village, the aunts, uncles, grandparents, they had folks believing in them, loving them, caring for them. And then also, he talked about setting high standards. So first it was the love and the care, belief, setting high standards, and demanding that those children and families adhere to those standards. Okay. And so when he was talking about that, I said, bingo. I said, that's what I need to address, and how, and I wanted to address it in a way where I was linking it to Malcolm X, because I said I definitely wanted to do an episode where I was talking about Malcolm X, because number one, you still have a lot of our young people who do not know about Malcolm X, but they've heard of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, these horrible people. They've heard of a lot of different white people who've created this, invented that, or whatever the case may be, because that's what they're inundated with. But our young people need to know the names of Malcolm X, Dr. Amos Wilson, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker. They need to know these names, and they need to know about what they did. And so that's why I said, well, I'm going to make sure I do an episode talking about Malcolm X. And I said, how am I going to, what do I want to say? How do I want to address this? And so it came to me again, after I was listening to that lecture by Dr. Amos Wilson, and him talking about how those key ingredients are what we need when it comes to educating our Black children. And he talked about how, a lot of times people get caught up in, well, I need to get this particular program, or I need to invest in this, or I need to make sure that they go to this particular school system, or, they need to have all of these different resources. And those things can very well be true. Of course, we understand our children, they need access to resources. They need the best high quality education possible. They don't need to be around in an environment where it's not conducive to them becoming the best student or the best learner or the best person that they can possibly be. They need to be set up in every way possible for success. However, the children, and I'm talking about the Black children in particular, those Black children who grow to understand, like a Malcolm X, like a Dr. Amos Wilson, like a Fannie Lou Hamer, those children who grow to understand that education is not just about an attainment of material things. It's not just about to say, well, I have this degree and I'm a doctor of this, and I have an MBA and I have a, dot, 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 and all of these things, or I live here and whoop de whoop, because then what we're doing is we're once again defining who we are by the white social structure standards. We're being told that, okay, this is the pinnacle of success. you go to school, or you get this, you get all the degrees, and you get all the things right, and you do well on the test, and then you'll be able to get you a great job or start a business. That's fine too. And then you attain all of these material things, and you've made it. You got it. That's the blueprint. But then you think about, well, what about the things in our society that is still in the way of our people actually being able to thrive? We still have a disproportionate amount of our folks who are struggling. And we know, just like, of course, this is real reading talk, I talk about, again, how reading is the foundation of us being able to thrive in all areas of our lives. And of course, we still have these high levels of illiteracy in our community. But if we have an ideology of the blueprint that white folks have gave us, well, you know what? If you do this and this and this and this, you'll be successful. And then you'll be able to get out the hood, and you'll be able to have your own communities and big house and cars and travel and all those things. It's like, no, 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 no. No. Because what we need to deal with is a system. The system needs to be destroyed, because this system was built on us not seeing us thrive, not seeing us in a position where we are self-determined, where we're able to create our own jobs, where we're able to build our own communities, all the infrastructure that goes into building a community, like our Black Wall Street, our ancestors who built Black Wall Street did, and others. The mentality, though, again, looping it back, because everything that I'm talking about, again, is going back to where I started from, which is talking about how Malcolm X's upbringing, the nurturing that he received at home, was the foundation as to how he developed the mindset, and he was able to leave a legacy that we remember, we revere, people study and talk about to this day. So I jotted down 4 things. The first thing is this: what Malcolm X received, which allowed him and which created the pathway for him to be able to be a man who left a legacy that is so great that every time we think about him, all we can think about is, oh my gosh, man, this man had courage beyond courage. He wanted to see our people be the best versions of themselves, in spite of a system that never saw or cared about our humanity. So the first thing, of course, loving and supportive family. Again, that's why I started off with his parents. See, with the white social structure, what they loved to do is they loved to start his family, or start his life rather, with everything being broken up. When you hear Malcolm X's name, a lot of times we would hear, oh, he hated white people. He thought white people were the devil. He was that man. He didn't want to see blacks and white people together. He wanted black people to have a separate nation. That's the kind of rhetoric that we would hear when it came to Malcolm X. That's why I appreciated this book here. Let me grab it right here. That's why I appreciated this book that Ilyasa Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X, that she wrote about her father, Malcolm Little, the boy who grew up to become Malcolm X. Because in this book, she says, no, I'm not going to allow folks to put my father in some kind of bubble. Like he was just he was a thug, and then he wound up getting in this black Muslim group where they hated white folks, and then then he eventually left the group, and he converted to Sunni or Orthodox Islam, and then he finally realized that okay, not all white people are bad, and then he wound up getting killed. The end. No, 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 no. That's why I said I'm going to go back to the beginning, because to me, this is a blueprint that we need to adopt. And a lot of you out there are already doing it. So, I already know I'm preaching to the choir to a lot of y'all who listen to me. But as a reminder, and for those of you who are still trying to figure it out, the first thing is the love and support from his family. He had his mother, Louise Little, who was, of course, at home with her children, teaching them, educating them. He talked about how she had taught them how to farm. He talked about how he had his little plot of land where he loved to grow peas. I read that again. Not only was it referenced in that book, Malcolm Little, of course, he talked about that in the autobiography of Malcolm X when he was talking about his life and how he grew up. And so that nurturing, that love, that care that he received from his mother, how she would read to her children. She wanted her children to be educated. She wanted her children to love who they were. She was a Garveyite, meaning what? That she followed the teachings of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. He was the man who was from Jamaica, and then he immigrated here to the United States, and he was on a mission to educate Black people about the importance of us being self-determined. And he was promoting Black people to move back to Africa. So this was her ideology, and it was Earl Little, Malcolm X's father's ideology as well. Malcolm X's father, Earl Little, orator. He would go and do these, he would go and speak in different churches or, different places where Black people would invite him to, talking about how Black people needed to be self-determined, how they needed to grow their own food, build their own things. How he even had, built his own, he wanted his own store built. That was something that he was doing. So this is the love and support that he received at his house from both of his parents. Both parents, despite whatever, just like with, especially during that time, you're talking about high levels of terror from the KKK. And then you had that other, racist group, I think it was called the Black Legionnaires, who were responsible for murdering his father. But both of his parents understood, they knew the value of what their family had. And they understood that this right here is the foundation that Black people need in order to attain that liberation, that freedom. So again, the first thing, love and support. Having that in his family, that right there was building the Malcolm X that we remember to this day. Number two, which I've already mentioned, anyway, the self-determination piece. Again, when I talked about how his father and mother, both Garveyites, understanding that, yes, we need to have our own, we need to build our own, we need to support each other as Black people. We don't need to keep being dependent upon what white folks are telling us to do. And in fact, his parents, they were considered the uppity Negroes. Because once again, when you're talking about liberation and freedom, not only you got to worry about the white folks, you got to worry about Black folks too. You got to worry about Black folks being scared, nervous. Why? Well, don't be saying all that stuff. Come on now, Earl. Don't be talking about, you scaring them white folks. That's what Malcolm X said in his autobiography of Malcolm X. That's what one of the Black folks had said to Earl Little. Your white folks, they scared of you. When Black folks get to talking like that, what that means is, man, all right, what I'm saying? I'm trying to warn you, be careful. Don't say too much because they're going to do something, right? But again, that self-determination piece, that right there this is what Malcolm X was receiving. This was being built up in this little boy. He got the message. He was getting the messages constantly. And so, once again, like I said, when we have these components and we build these in our children, these are the things in which how we'll see our children thrive and be successful. Number three, again, Black liberation ideology. As you notice, all of this is linked, right? The Black liberation ideology, the self-determination, because that is self-determination is a part of that Black liberation ideology. That love of self, that love of our people, not just wanting to see your family succeed. Because remember, that's what the false notion of white supremacy has taught us. It has taught us to be individuals in our thinking. So when you're an individual, you only focus on, well, I got mine, so you can get yours too. I was able to do it. Why can't you? That's when we start turning on each other, right? Well, that was the whole point. That's how our people were able to be enslaved. They understood the whole divide and conquer. Because see, when you divide a people and you start thinking about only yourself, then you're not going to be thinking about everybody being able to get lifted up, everybody being able to go and grow together. Oh no, that's out the door. Black liberation ideology says, wait a minute, all of us need to thrive. All of us need to be free. All of us need to be self-determined. And so again, Malcolm X received that. His father he would take him with him when he would go speak to these different churches or different venues. He would take his son. And Malcolm X, and he remembered that, and he was just like, that was something that he was so glad that he did. And in fact, as we know, Malcolm X wound up growing up to be a great orator. Well, where do you think he got that foundation from? His father. Having that unapologetic way about talking about how Black people need to stop being afraid, how we need to push through our fear. And that doesn't mean to say that we're not, obviously, again, like I just said, we push through the fear. So obviously we're going to be afraid. It's going to be times and moments where we're scared. Or it's going to be times we might make decisions that it might be like, okay, you know what, maybe I shouldn't do that right now, based off of you just trying to be careful, because again, you're living in a society that is anti-Black, that's anti-humanity, for real, for real. And so you got our folks who are doing everything that they could to show and display that, okay, I'm going to fight you as much as I possibly can, as humanly possible. And so that was number three. And number four, he received that love of reading and learning. Like I mentioned in the beginning, Louise Little, reading to her children, her teaching her son, and of course, all of them, about how to grow their own food. Him being that little boy who wanted to know things, inquisitive, asking questions, extremely smart. And as we know, he wound up being, when he was in school, he wound up being voted the class president. He was brilliant, but guess where that brilliance came from? His parents. Here it is, he's able to watch his father do excellent at public speaking. And in order for you to be able to talk about the things that our folks need to do, you had to be learned on some level. He had to have some type of understanding of what it was that our people needed to do. Malcolm X, again, not only did he see his father wanting to build his own store, he talked about how his father built their house. Literally built their house. That is education. That right there is what he was cultivated in. Those are the things that he was taught. And so even though, as we know the story, how he, everything, happened in terms of the family got split up, and, then he wound up going to live with his sister. And then, it was like things had started, going downhill for him, because that was the journey that that was the journey that he had to take. Everything happened the way it was supposed to happen, because what wound up happening towards the end? He wound up what? Coming to the foundation that was given to him. Even when he had joined the Nation of Islam, and then after he left the Nation of Islam, and then he wound up converting to Orthodox Islam, he still had the concept of Black liberation. He still had the concept of, we need to love ourselves. We need to love who we are. He still had the concept of self-determination. We need to have our own, build our own. He understood what it meant to be in a supportive and loving family, because he wound up creating that with his phenomenal partner, his wife, Betty Shabazz, and how they built their family together. That's what happens when you have a strong foundation. Because when you have a strong foundation, inshallah, as we say in the Muslim community, inshallah, God willing, that child is always going to come back to that foundation. That's why the foundation is so extremely key. It's an integral part of us building our children to where they will have that mindset of, oh, yes, I am going to be someone. Meaning what? I'm going to be somebody who is utilizing my gifts and my purpose that God has implanted in me. And these gifts and this purpose was not just for me, not just for me to just say, oh, look at me, degrees, cars, homes. I got jewelry. I got all of these different things. I got all the luxuries in life. No, 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 no. It's for you to build family, community, nation, and be a part of the globe and have that mindset. That's what Malcolm X left for us. And so that's what I have for you all today. I thought that was something that, for myself, I contemplate on Malcolm X a lot. I think about, his mindset. I think about how smart he was. I was just listening to, I know Dr. Greg Carr talked about how Peter Bailey, who was, I believe he was Malcolm X's secretary for years, he's the man who's still living to this day. And he has, of course, an accurate account of how Malcolm X, the type of person that he was, because he was an intimate close with him. And one of the things that Dr. Greg Carr said that Peter Bailey said is that he was an excellent listener. Malcolm X listened very well. And I was just like, I said, look at that. And you think about it, once again, I go back to what? When he would go and listen to his father go and speak about how Black people need to be self-determined. He got those listening skills from listening to his father do those speeches. And then, of course, just, being a child and being raised in a way where he understood that he had to respect his parents and, those sorts of things. So again, that foundation, he had that. It was inculcated in him. And this is a reminder to all of you, myself first and all of you. All of those things that I mentioned, those are things that it's not about going to purchase some type of program or you trying to enroll your child in a class to get those things. We have those things in us. We have it within our families. Whether you have a child where both of the parents are in the home still, or whether it's a co-parenting situation, or it's a situation where there's just a single parent. As long as you have the ideology and the mindset that you believe in your child and that you see your child thriving in all areas of life, all of those components that I named, trust and believe. When you put that in your child, they will never depart from it. Again, I'm going to say, inshallah, God willing, they won't depart from it. Even when they have hiccups, even when they got to go through challenges, they make decisions. You're like, uh-oh, I wouldn't do that. Because, as parents, we want our kids desperately, those of us parents who care and who are invested, we want our children desperately to not make the same mistakes that we've made. We want them to see our mistakes, and then we just praying to God, please God, that they see the crazy crap and things that we've done, that they do not follow it. But as we know, as it comes to and pertains to human beings, it don't always pan out that way, right? A lot of times our kids, they'll see things we've done and then they wind up repeating the same thing. So that's why I'm saying, but again, don't give up. Keep going back to that foundation. Keep going back to the things that I mentioned about how Malcolm X, how he was reared, how he was cultivated. And I truly believe that our children will thrive. We're going to get away from just surviving. We will thrive, inshallah, God willing. All right. So I thank you all again for listening to another episode of Real Reading Talk. I've been your most gracious host, Miss Sasha. And again, Real Reading Talk is the platform in which I discuss the real systemic issues at the very core, the very foundation, as to why we have these high levels of illiteracy in the Black community and the ways in which we can combat these issues together. I thank you all for listening. And remember to please keep reading for at least 30 minutes a day, y'all. And remember, reading is freedom. Peace. All right, everybody. I hope that you all enjoyed that episode, gained lots of benefit. And remember, like I always tell you all, make sure that you like, subscribe, share, comment, and hit the notification bell. So some housekeeping real quick. Again, I am a pre-K through fourth grade reading tutor. And if your child is struggling with things like phonemic awareness, comprehension, they are struggling with any type of foundational reading skills, please make sure you go to my website, abclearntutoring.com. Click on the free reading assessment today. Summer is coming, y'all, and you do not want to have your child behind. All right, so you want to keep them ahead, or if they are struggling, you want to get on top of it ASAP. Also, I'm the founder and executive director of ABC Read, and our mission is to develop and nurture a culture of literacy in Black and underserved communities. And I appreciate you guys. Again, we had our very first fundraising gala, and it was an absolute success. Folks came through. They bought tickets, they donated. It was such a phenomenal success. And again, all of those proceeds went back into our organization. And you can support us by going to abcread.org so we can continue to pump out these great dope reading experiences, the books that are culturally relevant, that hit the spirit, the books that our people need and want for our babies and themselves as well, because we give books again for everybody. So make sure you check us out, abcread.org. Also, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Reading is Freedom, and make sure you share the podcast, Real Reading Talk, and listen on all the different podcast platforms. And last but not least, readingisfreedomshop.com is where you can grab the mug. Also, my shirt is one of the shirts as well that says Ikra, which is the Arabic word for read. All right, right there. I'm all trying to pull my shirt all up on so you can see it. But yes, you guys, make sure that you go check out the merch. And then I want to share with you all the book that I've been reading. Oh my goodness. The Battle for the Black Mind by Dr. Corita L. Brown. Y'all, that book right there, you talking about breaking down how this educational system started and how a lot of these HBCUs, where they got their foundation. She is just on it. You talking about thorough research, okay? So I highly implore that you guys grab that book, all right? And I'm going to leave with a quote from Malcolm X, which is, what I want us to remember is we do everything that we can to make sure that we put ourselves in a position to thrive, like he said, by any means necessary. All right, y'all. Thank you all again for listening. This has been another episode of Real Reading Talk. I am your host, Miss Seisha, and remember, reading is freedom. Peace.